Hello everyone, McMeghan here with a new upload about an ADV game I played recently for the World Cup of Pokemon on Smogon. Recently, I have been playing some more Pokemon, especially ADV, the tier I started playing the game with, and I've just really been passionate about it, be it for the tournaments I had to play or even by myself, just playing on the ladder, thinking about the tier, talking with other people. And the result of all of this is I want to spread some love about the tier, and I think a good way to pull this off is to go back on YouTube and make some content. So this is why I'm here, and I'm gonna start this whole thing by posting some reviews about the games I had to play for the World Cup. And the first game I had to play was against Heysup from Team Canada, and this video will, like in the past, showcase the team I used, the team building behind it, and then a game narration. Also, if you don't hear any music in the background, this is normal. I think the video doesn't really need it, and you can just put whatever you want yourself. Anyway, let's move to the team. So this is the team I used against Heysup. I wanted something that had a good matchup against offense because he's a known offense player, and that's what I was expecting from him. I also wanted my team to be flexible, a bit more on this ladder, and I also decided that I wanted to use spikes against him. So what do I mean by being flexible? I just mean that I want Pokemon that don't suffer from pressure a lot, and a good example that I can give you when it comes to flexibility is, for example, the choice of your bulky water if you decide to run one. Suicune is a good bulky water, but it's not really flexible because it takes spike damage and sand damage, which are very present in the ADV tier. On the other end, Swampert is more flexible because it doesn't take spikes damage. Well, no, sorry, it takes spike damage, but more importantly, it doesn't take sandstorm damage, which is great because you always get some passive recovery from the leftovers this way, and your opponent has a harder time racking up damages on your wall for his sweeper to get through you. Also, why did I want spikes? It's because I wanted to have a solid backbone against him, defensive backbone I mean, which you can see from the Swampert, Skarmory, and Blissey core, although the Skarmory is offensive. Anyway, I wanted the defensive backbone. And something you have to keep in mind is that you have to put damages on the opponent. After all, you have to kill his 6 before he kills yours. And when going with defense against offense, that's always something to keep in mind, because if you take hits whole game long and only just use recovery, you're eventually gonna get axed. So you want to make some progress. And Spike is a great way to do so because it's passive and you can focus on controlling and recovery while Spikes do some work for you at least. So the Pokemon individually. First of all, the spiker of choice, in this case Skarmory. I wanted Skarmory against Heysup because, well, I was thinking between Fortress and Skarmory, and I thought of offensive Skarmory, which has picked up in popularity recently with his YOLO Skarm set, featuring HP Ground. This is because I was expecting Magneton from him, or at least I knew that he liked Magneton a lot. So this is why I went with Skarmory. You may say that, well, maybe you don't depending on how much you play ADV, but you can see from the teams that I have Dugtrio in the back, which means I could have gone with a regular Skarmory, which has more staying power, since you can play you can trap Magneton before it tries to trap your Skarmory. But in this case, I was expecting a fast-paced game. And I like this variant of Skarmory better because it can put some damages on the opponent. In this case, it's particularly important because you can do some damages with HP Ground or Drill Peck and put a lot of things in the kill range for Dugtrio. For example, let's say you face off against Lee Metagross. You can Spikes and then HP Ground and pick up the Metagross with Skarmory before it booms on anything. You can also, for example, HP Ground a Tyranitar to put it in Dugtrio range because you always want some previous damages. Let's say you face the offensive Swampert, which is pretty popular right now. It's kind of a problem for this kind of team for the kind of teams that I was running, which relies on Blissey and Scamroy and Sompert. But with this offensive Scamroy, you can drill peck it once or twice before it kills you, and then suddenly it's already in Dugtrio range. So you always have an advantage this way. So this is why I decided to go with YOLO Skarm. Yeah, let me just see. Yeah, okay, I didn't forget anything about... Oh yeah, something else that I liked in YOLO Skarm compared to defensive Scamroy is the speed. Because my idea when going into this game was to get a spikes as soon as possible, and then just play recklessly with Scamroy if need be. But I just wanted a spikes ASAP, so I can put the pressure from the get-go. Well, not a whole lot of pressure, but I can start racking up damages ASAP, and not like just crumble under an offensive assault from him. Then I decided to go with Sompert as my bulky water of choice, because it's flexible. Like I said, even on the sand it gets passive recovery from leftovers. Regarding the moveset, I always knew I was going to use Protect to rack up recovery. It's a classic on the Pokemon. And I also knew I wanted to use Roar, because Heysup tends to use a lot of Baton Pass Celebi, which can be pretty scary for defensive team, just like Baton Passing a Calm Mind or a Sword Dance especially. That's what I was fearing the most. Sword Dance Celebi plus Magneton into Sweeper like Agiligross or Salamence or Aerodactyl. And Raw Pert is a good way to deal with Celebi, since your answer cannot be trapped. It also obviously works up fine with spikes from Scamroy. It has obvious synergy. Now Tyranitar, I wanted to use it because it provides sense and general utility from like its typing and moveset as usual. Send especially so it can cancel leftovers from the opponent Pokemon, and this way I can always make progress through the game. Even if I'm playing defensively, I can make progress from Sand and Spikes. So regarding the moveset, Rock Slide and Earthquake were pretty well. They're not obvious, but I decided to go with an offensive version of Tyranitar featuring Rock Slide, Earthquake, and HP Gross, because I think the three moves had the most like utility against the majority of the metagame, and especially someone like Heysup. And I also wanted my Tyranitar to have some speed. You can see that I have 172 EVs, which puts me at more than 200. And the reason why is that I wanted the most chances to get a hit should I face Pokemon in that speed tier like Metagross or Tyranitar. It's always useful to put them in Dugtrio range, or to just have the advantage, because Tyranitar cannot be easily OKO'd. So I can win the duel if I'm in a Tyranitar Ditto or Tyranitar Metagross sitting. Lastly, I always tested the team with Roar on Tyranitar, but it didn't reveal to be much useful, since I already had it on Sompert and Zapdos. Occasionally, it could rack up damage and scoot the team with spikes, but it wasn't terribly useful. And at the end of the day, I decided to use Dragon Dance, because even though I was expecting offense from Heysup, and I don't think DD Tyranitar without Lumberry is that great against offense. But just in case you would use something a bit more defensive, with featuring like Scamroy or Milotic, which I would have been weak to otherwise, DD would give me some answers in this kind of matchup. Now regarding Zapdos, I just knew that in this slot I wanted something fast and powerful. And I think Zapdos is a great choice against offense, because they typically lack the stone cold answers to Pokemon like Zapdos. For example, in ADV, a stone cold answer to Zapdos would be something like Blissey, but it isn't really seen on offense. And a lot of offense deal with Zapdos by just taking 1 or 2 T-Bolt early from Snorlax, something like that, or Tyranitar. But if you can keep Zapdos for a bit longer, then it becomes a lot more fearsome. I also decided to go with a max speed and timid nature to make sure I would outspeed everything you commonly see in the tier, outside some faster threat like Gengar or Starmie. But knowing that you outspeed or at least tie all variants of Zapdos, Salamence that I can think of is pretty important in an offense Ditto. Well, no, not in an offense Ditto because I'm not really using offense, but against offense in general. Should say for example switch Zapdos or Salamence against your own Zapdos, just because they want to take a hit off, then knowing that you will outspeed and kill them before they can damage you is pretty important and can turn the tide in this kind of matchup. Originally, I wanted to use HP Ice because it's more useful against offense in general, especially what I was expecting from Heysup. In this case, I have Salamence and Celebi in mind, but I thought that team was way too weak to Swampert otherwise, and this is why I decided to go with HP Grass. I know I have Toxic for Swampert, but a lot of them run Refresh nowadays, so that I didn't want to be too annoyed in case of a Refresh Swampert. So this is why I went with HP Grass and Toxic. Also, Toxic typically can do enough to get Celebi off your face, especially if you can keep spikes, and I had Dugtrio anyway. Roar is there to rack up damages from spikes, and also I wanted two farther in my team against Heysup because I was really scared of Baton Pass Celebi. Well, Baton Pass in general, but Baton Pass Celebi in particular. So for example, let's say I lose one of some pairs of Zapdos to Boom Metagross or anything that trade, like Self-Destruct Snorlax. Well, I had I had a backup should I run into Celebi. Then I went with Dugtrio. Dugtrio is great here because it's fast and can pick up everything, and as a result reduces the pace of the game. It can also trap Tyranitar or Metagross, and so my Swampert can stay healthy for the late game. For example, if you face an offense featuring Metagross and Tyranitar, a common way to deal with Swampert is for the Metagross to boom on it, and Tyranitar can sweep you late game. But in my kind of team, I can deal with Metagross between spikes, just some stray hit, and then Dugtrio picking it off before it can boom on my Swampert. So this is why I decided to go with it over the usual Gengar in that slot. And then I wanted off the team with Blissey, just typical special sweeper answer. I wanted to use Jirachi because it's pretty flexible, and it's flexible in the sense that it doesn't take sand damage and gets recovery from leftovers. But after testing the team with Jirachi a lot, I wasn't satisfied with the result. In fact, I didn't like my matchup against HP Grass Zapdos because Jirachi isn't a really great answer to it, especially if it gets paralyzed from T-Wave. And in general, I wasn't a fan of Wish Protect as a form of recovery. It's just something that I don't really like because it gives too much options to your opponent to get the momentum back and play around you. So this is why I ended up going with Blissey, featuring Ice Beam and T-Wave because it's just the best set against offense in general, in my opinion. And I think this is pretty much it regarding the team building. May have forgotten a things or two, but I think I talked about the most important. So I will move to the game now. Let me check. Okay, so I can move to the game. I'm keeping the team on top of the screen because it's something you can keep in mind while I'm playing. Also, I'm sorry if my explanation are a bit confused. It's been a while since I had to talk so much in English all at once, and I know it's not my strength as a YouTuber, but hopefully it's enough to understand what I have in mind regarding what I want to explain. Anyway, on to the game. So I lead against Camry and I lead with Camry and I face Metagross. Honestly, this is the best kind of lead you want with YOLO Skarm. Unlike defensive Skarmory, it takes a lot of damage from pretty much anything. You really see the difference, especially in the special side. That's why it's not that great when you face, for example, Salamence lead or Tyranitar lead, because you cannot take a Fire Blast like you would with a usual Skarmory. But in this case, facing Metagross is amazing. And a great advantage of running YOLO Skarm instead of SpeedF Skarm against Metagross is knowing that you will be faster and you will be able to get a spikes off even if you decide to boom on turn 1. So this is what I do. I get the spikes. I also will mention that with defensive Skarmory you might want to scout for Magneton, but in this case I don't have to, since I have HP ground and I'm max attack and max speed to kill the Magneton. So I get a spikes off, and he revealed his own Skarmory. So I was a bit afraid at this point because my team wasn't really prepared to face a defensive team with spikes. I knew that I would lose in the long run in this kind of scenario. So from this point, I know I'm gonna have to play as offensive as possible, because if for some reason he has a defensive team featuring SpeedF Skarmory, I'm probably gonna be on the back. I'm probably gonna have an unfavorable matchup. So I get the spikes up, and then I have Taunt to prevent his own spikes from going up. Another good perks of running YOLO Skarm here. And I get a second spikes up. He reveals Moltres at this point, so it doesn't give me too much information about his team so far, because it could be still leaning defensively with the other three. But in this case, I'm very happy to have gone with Blissey as my special wall instead of specially defensive Jirachi, because otherwise this Moltres would have been a lot of trouble. So I decide to go on Blissey. He reveals Will-O-Wisp. Will-O-Wisp makes sense here, since he can scout the answer, and if it's not Blissey, you can status it. For example, if you catch Suicune or a Snorlax or even a Tyranitar, it's better than to just throw a useless fire move at it. But too bad for him, I have Blissey, and with Natural Cure I don't have to. This Will-O-Wisp doesn't really annoy me. So on this turn, I'm just gonna go ahead and explain that obviously he's not gonna stay in. Well, he could, but it's very unlikely because he doesn't want his Moltres to take a status. And considering the fact that he has Skarmory, he probably wants his spikes up ASAP. Because usually Spikes team wanna have them up ASAP. So instead of staying and throwing a T-Wave at his switch in, I decide to double to my Zapdos. Why Zapdos? Well, Zapdos is far as a positive matchup against a lot of things, and in this case it would both match up well against Moltres if he decided to stay in, which was unlikely, or it would have a good matchup against Skarmory if he decided to go back to it, which is what I was expecting. Also, like I said earlier, the fact that I wanted to play this game as offensively as possible as soon as he reveals Skarmory, because I know that if he managed to get his spikes up, it could mean a lot of trouble for me if the game was going to last longer than expected. So that's why I made that double to Zapdos, and I can start putting some pressure on him thanks to the 2 spikes I got early game. That's where he revealed Celebi. And this was good for me because Celebi isn't a sturdy answer to Zapdos like a Blissey would be. I decided to roar, by the way, because I didn't expect the Skarmory to stay in against Zapdos at this point. Also, I was glad to be max speed Zapdos, because knowing that I will outspeed this Moltres no matter what is pretty useful. And this is why I went with this spread this game. So by phasing the Celebi, I managed to further scout his team, and it's showing to not be as defensive as originally thought, which is great for me because I have all the momentum in the world right now between the spikes and Zapdos being on the field. The roar reveals Dugtrio, and it looks like well, I cannot really say much about it so far. Well, I mean, I know because I know the rest of his team, knowing that I played the game, but at the time of the battle, I just knew that his team wasn't as defensive as I could have expected. Sorry, given the early Scamry, which is a great value for me because my team is really geared toward beating offense between Zapdos, Spikes, and Dugtrio. So I didn't want to take use. I could have like tried to kill the Dugtrio with HP Gross, knowing that I would tank Rock Slide, but there was no need for me to risk a flinch or a crit there, so I just went back to Scamry. Scamry was a great option no matter what because it's Zapdos' answer revealed to be Celebi, and Scamry would have done well against both Celebi and a Dugtrio using Rock Slide. So we will Leech Seed here, which means the Celebi isn't offensive, or most likely isn't. I did use Drill Peck here just in case it would be offensive, so I could get some damage on it and put it in Dugtrio range. As you can see, Drill Peck did 40, which means it was a defensive Celebi from the damage calc. Using Recover, I decided to get my third Spikes up. Even though I'm Leech seeded, I'm just gonna switch now. So I went back to Blissey. Arguably a bit scary of a choice. Should he be a baton pass sweeper, a baton passer? But since he had Weevil Recover and Leech Seed, if he had baton pass in the set, it would mean that he had no offensive move and I could just roar it with Zapdos or Swampert afterwards. So I decided to T-Wave it here. T-Wave is a safe move against anything. Even if he goes to Scamry, being able to T-Wave, even if he went to Scamry, being able to T-Wave it would have given it less chances to do whatever he wanted, given the odds of him getting fully paralyzed. So since my Blissey is seeded, I'm just going back to Scamry, and now I'm even faster, so I can taunt it or Drill Peck. But since he has seen taunt from Scamry, he has no reason to stay in, and I decided to go back on Zapdos to get some offensive momentum again. Decided to go back on Scamry. This time around, I have no reason to roar. I'm just gonna T-Bolt it, and he decided to stay in and dies from one hit, which is surprising because if he was running a Careful Scamry, he would have died. Oh, sorry, he would have tanked and could have gotten a Spikes up or a Toxic. But I think he was more likely to get a Spikes up because his team really wanted one. And for this reason, I decided to stay in. And even if he decided to Toxic, it would have been fine because the Scamry would have taken damages, and I can deal with Zapdos being Toxic at this point. So at this point of the game, as a little summary, is Zapdos' answer as revealed to be Celebi, which takes Spikes damage. So, and I didn't take any damage on my Pokemon, so I can't see a way to lose this at this point. I have too much of an advantage. The strategy I had in mind when preparing this game has really worked off. As in, I wanted to get my Spikes early, and YOLO Scam managed to even deny his own Spikes from going up. And the Zapdos, which was my main tool against offense, is doing a lot of damages, and it doesn't have real answer to it so far. At this point of the game, Zapdos is beating both Moltres, Dugtrio, both Moltres and Dugtrio. Celebi isn't a threat to it, and I can trap it later with Dugtrio. My own, I mean. And even Metagross cannot threaten to boom on it, because at this point my Scamry is useless. So I can always go on Scamry with his Metagross, and to kill it he either has to sacrifice himself with boom, and if he doesn't, I can just pick it off with Dugtrio again. So I just have to watch out for his last at this point. Also, the current set of Celebi is Leech Seed, Recover, Psychic, so I don't have anything to be scared of. Even Calm Mind in the last load would just mean my Tyranitar hard rolls it, or I can just beat it with Toxic from Zapdos. This is why I decided to go to Toxic here. He gets a Lychee dot, but it doesn't matter. I can just go back to Blissey. I have nothing to fear at this point. My Blissey cannot die to Dugtrio ever, and it's in kill range from Ice Beam. At this point of the game, I'm on pretty much autopilot mode. I just have to watch out for his last. Like, it would be set to lose to last Snorlax or last Suicune. But I've sent I've sent in the back and Dugtrio to take care of it, and even my spikes. I always make sure to have my Zapdos or Blissey on the field without lead sheet, so I can keep up offensive momentum without giving him any options. At this point of the game, he will Baton Pass, which means the Celebi doesn't even have CM to threaten me off. I know I'm faster than Moltres, so I can always T-ball safely. The Celebi has a hard time tanking on Zapdos in this situation, given the 3 spikes too. It's always forced to recover immediately, which gives me a free roar or a free switch if I want to. I decide to roar to further scout his team, and his last is revealed to be Suicune at this point, which is another Pokemon Zapdos will deal with easily. Even a last month Suicune would die to understand to Zapdos and Dugtrio, so I have nothing to fear. I just have to play out the endgame without like being too reckless with my Pokemons right now. I roar again. It sends Suicune, which I rack up damages on. He always has to go on to Celebi to deal with Zapdos, and the Celebi is always forced to recover because of the spikes. This is why I wanted to use spikes against offense. You can see it in action here. This way I can I can rack up damages. Yeah, I can rack up damages. So something that I had in mind while I was playing, and I want to touch a bit upon, is that when I build a team, I put a Tyranitar, so I could have Sandstorm and cancel the recovery of my opponent, right, from the leftovers, which could have been helpful in this situation against Celebi and Suicune. But given the first few turns of the game, it was pretty much obvious that my Zapdos was much more of a threat than anything it could. Was the biggest threat in the game, rather, to be more precise. And this is why I didn't send Tyranitar yet, because leftovers on Zapdos is more important at this point of the game than cancelling the leftovers of Celebi and Suicune. So I get some damage on Metagross. Like I said earlier, the Metagross cannot even take something important with it. I can just go to my offensive Skarmory and force it to either boom, or if it doesn't boom to kill Skarmory, I will just trap it with Dugtrio, so it cannot take a more important member of the team with boom. And this is what happens. It takes my useless Skarmory at this point, and the threat of boom is gone. I decided to go with Zapdos after the boom because it had the better matchup against his 4 Pokemon. In this case, it did give him the possibility to recover back with Celebi, but it doesn't really matter. I can just roar first and rack up some damages on Suicune or Dugtrio, and if it sends out Moltres, I'm faster anyway. So it does send Dugtrio. Once again, I'm not gonna risk the Rock Slide, flinch or crit, so I just go back to Swampert. Swampert had Roar 2, which is gonna be fantastic here. I rack up damages on Celebi. It goes back to Dugtrio. This time around, I don't think Roar is the play. I can just Ice Beam, because if it goes to Celebi, I will pick it up or put it in at like 5% with Ice Beam. And if he stays in, I remove the Dugtrio threat, which happens. Decide to go Moltres, but I still have a safe Blissey at this point of the game. It can't do anything. I don't think this game needs much narration at this point. I have way too much of an advantage. I've Spicy has none. I decided to go Tyranitar at this point to speed up the endgame. The Celebi is paralyzed, so even though I don't have bug coverage on Tyranitar, it will be enough to Like between rock slide flinch possibility and the fact that it doesn't have anything to touch on Tyranitar, I just don't care about it. So I get a D dance up. He gets it Blissey. Technically he can beat it, but between the flinch and paralysis, it's better for him to switch out. He decides to go to button pass on Moltres. It can't really go back to Celebi or Suicune because of Sand and Spike, so he has to stay in at this point. He wills to be faster, which is normal. I mean, because I'm only at 300 speed right now, and he's probably max speed timid, so he's sitting at 306. Even though he burned me, it doesn't matter because Dugtrio and Zapdos cleans the game at this point. So he goes Suicune. At this point of the game, the Suicune will die to a T-Bolt from Zapdos. So I decide to go Dugtrio on the next turn because if he sends an attack, if he sends off an offensive move and kills Dugtrio, my Zapdos will be faster and kills it with T-Bolt. The next time the Suicune will come in, it will have 3 spikes. It will have to take 3 spikes damage. He Calm Mind here. Earthquake reveal the Suicune to be offensive, so it's most likely not rest, but at this point, even if it had rest, it doesn't matter because it cannot use it anymore. Zapdos is gonna kill it, and if it switch out, it cannot come back on the field with the spikes. And as a result, Zapdos cleans the game, and I can throw off a Toxic and beat the Celebi this way. Just something I can go back on, yeah, on this turn. Okay, so my Tyranitar is burned and seeded, which means Suicune can Calm Mind for free. Just in case it was gonna be defensive Suicune. Going Dugtrio here forces it to either rest or surf. Yeah, okay. Just like... Yeah, let's just say he kills the Dugtrio on the switch. Let's just say he kills the Dugtrio on the switch, and I have Zapdos to... Zapdos can just deal the endgame safely between T-Bolt and Roar. Roar will always get Suicune on the field and will take 3 spikes damage, and it will always have to switch out because of the threat of T-Bolt. And once and I can just do that until the Suicune is asleep. And once it's asleep, it cannot ever like attempt a comeback with Spikes and Sandstorm, given my the fact that Zapdos is still alive. I'm just talking about the scenario like what if Dugtrio died on the switch there. And that sums it up. Yeah, that sums it up. So like little summary of the game, I ran into the matchup I was expecting, as in offense, although I was expecting something with Magneton, which I was prepared for anyway. The team worked out fine. Some special mention to YOLO's Karmi, which worked overtime, got spikes early and prevented Is from ever giving me any pressure. The game could have been like really different if Heysup decided to boom on turn 1 with Metagross. In this case, I would have only gotten one spikes up, and he might have gotten his own spikes later in the game, which would have make it a lot more like a lot more fought, if that makes sense. But regardless, he was always gonna be weak to that Zapdos. I never made the play of doubling to Dugtrio on his Celebi, but I could have, because I didn't think there was any reason for me to do so given the advantage I had in the game. But if I didn't have this kind of advantage, I could have done it myself. So yeah, I think that sums it up. Thanks for listening. Hopefully gonna post my other 2 games in a like not too much a long time. I have some other projects in mind. It's mostly gonna be ADV video from now on, but I will just do as I please, to be fair. If you have any suggestions or like advice to give me in the comment, feel free to do so, and have a nice day.